Mobile games are getting bigger, hardware is advancing, graphical quality is going up, and the scope of what's possible on mobile is increasing beyond even some dedicated home console machines. But what if, for some reason, you wanted to make the smallest mobile game in the world? Let's talk game design. First, we need to clarify what I mean by smallest. I don't mean, for example, the lowest file size. What I mean is literally, physically, the smallest. You see, LTGD now has a sister channel, imaginatively titled Game Stuff, and the first video over on Game Stuff is about this, the world's smallest smartphone. I highly recommend you go watch that video and then subscribe to Game Stuff for more stuff that's about games, because it's somewhere that I can talk more generally about random game gubbins that I'm interested in. It's a fun time. Anyway, over the course of that video, I played a lot of things that you'd think would be impossible on a device smaller than a credit card, and it got me thinking, how would you design for this? Well, let's look at mobile games in general and see what we can learn. I am an old man. As a result, I've been unfortunate enough to witness the birth, growth, annoying dominance and monetization of mobile gaming as a platform. Back in my day, the height of technological supremacy in the mobile game space was this. This is Snake, running on the Nokia 3210. They were simpler times. They weren't necessarily better times because, frankly, this was horrible and I had a Game Boy Color, but they were certainly simpler. Interestingly enough, even if we go as far back as Snake, we're going to run into a problem if we try and replicate this on our little 3-inch world's smallest smartphone, namely buttons. Instead, we'd need to do some kind of weird swiping gesture to turn around, and we don't really have the room. So we're already further behind than we were when we started, and that was 23 years ago. Wonderful. As we all know, a good mobile game is primarily about one thing: making money from more accessibility. They're simple and easy to understand, because they inherently have the broadest possible market appeal and audience. Everybody has a smartphone, so it logically follows that everybody can, if you can hook them just right, play smartphone games. To this end, most mobile games are simple concepts that get gradually expanded over short play sessions. So what we need is something that's immediately understandable to the player within the first couple of seconds of opening it up. Something like one of the most popular and legendary mobile games of all time, Flappy Bird. Mobile games also generally need to be designed to make the most of touch controls. Most people do not want to go out and buy a dedicated gamepad for their phone, even if it'd give them more precise control options, and is actually how you're meant to play video games, because on-screen controls are a vile sin against the ancient gods of good taste. So we need something that can be exclusively controlled by touch, while also remaining immediately understandable. Something like one of the most popular and legendary mobile games of all time, Flappy Bird. We also need something with a broad and simplistic visual presentation, something that, while not only being immediately understandable, also looks approachable and just pleasant with a uniform aesthetic. Because if we're making a mobile game, we're trying to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. We need something that will look inoffensive and won't be off-putting to people who don't necessarily like good graphics for whatever reason. Something like one of the most popular and legendary mobile games of all time, Flappy Bird. And finally, we need something that can run on the lowest possible hardware configurations. We are going to be making an Android game because I don't own a Mac, so I can't export for iOS. And the problem with Android development is that there are literally billions of people in the world with a broad spectrum of hardware configurations. One person might have the brand new Red Magic 7 with its 165Hz screen and state-of-the-art Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, while another person might have a battered and bruised Samsung Galaxy S5 that they bought for £20 from a shady gentleman in a hoodie with a nervous twitch. Ideally, we'd like to make sure our game can run just as well for both of these people, which means keeping the system requirements as low as we can possibly get them. We need something that can run on the mobile equivalent of a toaster. Something like one of the most popular and legendary mobile games of all time, Flappy Bird. So, given everything we've just discussed and all the lessons we've learned, I think it's pretty obvious where we're going from here. For us to make the world's smallest mobile game ever made, we're going to be taking all of our design cues from an obscure PSP exclusive puzzle game that nobody's ever heard of. This is Every Extend Extra. It's one of my favourite pick up and play arcade style games, and you've probably never heard of it because I'm a hipster. The general idea is that you move around the screen trying to blow yourself up in an optimal place that will create the most damage, since you need to hit certain score thresholds to gain an extend or an extra life. You go through the levels blowing stuff up and killing bosses as they arrive. It's in the same vein of games like Rez and Karushi, where you have a stylized expression of a very simple mechanic taken to its logical conclusion. I don't know if there's a name for that subgenre of thing, but given the focus on aesthetics wrapped over a very simple gameplay mechanic, I'm going to call them fanciful arts, or for short, farts, because I'm an adult. Now, we're not going to be taking much of the aesthetic expression of every Extend Extra, but we will be borrowing the basic gameplay, things exploding other things. And so we end up here. I call this Heart Attack, and it's only now that I'm looking back at footage of it that I realise what I've basically made here is an alternative Undertale combat system. Whoops. The basic idea probably doesn't need explaining to you. In fact, the entire game is designed so that nothing needs explaining to you. I'd ask you if you could figure it out for yourself, but that wouldn't make a very interesting video, would it? Touching within the white boundary on the screen creates small explosions, and as the particles fly out, if they make contact with those little spinning squares, they will blow up. Meanwhile, there's a little pulsing heart rotating around the middle of the screen, and all those bad, evil, very bad, not very good squares are heading right for it. Your job, of course, is to stop that from happening via the universal problem-solving mechanic of blowing stuff up. And that's it, really. I'd love to tell you that there's more to it than that, and I'd love to be able to explain the scoring system, but I'll be honest, I have no idea why it jumps at random intervals, so we'll put that down as an intentional choice. Remember, this is a mobile game, so we can get away with having random values happening for completely arbitrary reasons. The next step is to put in a slot machine that spontaneously gives you 50 billion meaningless points if you connect a credit card. Now for the ultimate test. How does it play on the world's smallest smartphone? Pretty good, actually. Even with my chunky sausage fingers, it's pretty easy to see what's going on. The setting is clear and crisp, the game runs at a good speed despite the hardware in here being incredibly old. And because I've made the explosions pulse out in a circular radius, it's almost like pushing your finger down creates a kinetic ripple in the surface of the screen. I could have gone further with the aesthetics, but like I said, this has to run on something very, very old. And if you've played my other mobile game, you'll know I'm not brilliant at optimizing for performance. Now, I'll be honest with you, viewer, I cannot be bothered to go through the obscene amount of faff that's required to list a game on the Google Play Store, so this isn't going to be available there. However, if you would like to play it for yourself and you sort of know what you're doing, you can check out a link to the game's itch.io page in the description and download the APK yourself. I promise it's safe. It doesn't install any nefarious spyware, it doesn't require any permissions at all, it is in fact less bad for your device than most of the stuff you can actually get on the Play Store. For example, this one doesn't want money from you to spin a random number generator for a 0.2% chance of getting that digital waifu that you like. Yet. Go and check out the Game Stuff channel if you like this kind of mad, random, techie, gamey thing, because I'll be doing more stuff over there in the future. And I'll see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.